Okay, record on that. And let us pray. Gracious, loving God, we give you thanks. We give you thanks for the gift of your word. We give you thanks for our ability to hear you through it. God, guide us that we are truly hearing you. In Jesus' most holy name we pray. Amen.
Man.
Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to this weirdly scheduled edition of Scripture Talk. We had I have some travel and complicated schedules. We'll be back on our normal schedule next week, but at 6 p.m. tomorrow, I will be hopefully somewhere in like Alabama and not able to stop. And I was not going to do a podcast from a Starbucks, a random roadside Starbucks, in whatever, Birmingham.
Yeah.
So instead, we're recording a day early so that I can hit the road in the morning. Next week's recording schedule for this show should be normal. The only show that might be impacted next week is Game Bad Jesus Rad, but we'll see. I'm taking a whole backpack full of gear with me so that I can produce various shows from the road.
We'd expect nothing less from you, bro.
Yeah, well, God. When I went, I'll introduce y'all here in a second. When I went to my school, I went to a really weird middle school, and so my school would like go on an annual retreat to like a retreat center thing called Mo Ranch, and I think we were supposed to like experience nature or some junk. I don't remember. What we used it as was an opportunity to pull horrendous pranks on each other for about a week, and we didn't seem to get in a lot of trouble for it. And so one year when I went to Mo Ranch, my mother accused me of going to spook camp because I had like walkie-talkies and I had a whole suitcase full of tools to pull pranks with, including a really elaborate set of walkie-talkies where we could sneak into the girls' bunks, hide a walkie-talkie underneath one of their mattresses. The walkie-talkie had its like broadcast button taped down to see if we could hear what was happening, which is nothing. They're sleeping. Who cares? But like hear what was happening in the girls' cabins. So often when I travel, I take too much tech with me. It goes all the way back to being a 7th grader. Anyways, I'm really glad that story. I don't think that's a story I've ever told before. I'm glad that story is out there. It's wonderful. Really great. Anyways, I'm Pastor Trey Comstock. With me as ever is my lovely panel of hosts. Go Brandy.
Sister Brandy Dudley, how y'all doing?
Go Stacy.
On Stacy Tyler.
And go Scott.
Pastor Scott Ketchot, good to see everybody.
And whatever that story was, this is Scripture Talk. And we are we're back with you. This is where we read the scripture for the week and kind of talk it through. And this week's scripture is a Genesis chapter 22 verses 1 through 14. It is what colloquially gets called the binding of Isaac. After these things, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love. He couldn't say take Ishmael, because Ishmael is already gone. So, anyways, that's a problem. And go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I shall show you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. He cut the wood for the burnt offering and set out and went to the place in the distance that God had shown him. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place far, far away. Then Abraham said to his young man, Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. So the 2 of them walked on together. Isaac said to his father Abraham, Father, and he said, Here I am, my son. He said, The fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." So the two of them walked on together. When they came to the place that God had shown him, Abraham built an altar and laid the wood in order. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on your boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide," as it is said to this day, "On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." So one of my favorite ways to explore this text that I have when I've preached on it before is to ask the question, what did Abraham expect to happen? Right? What did Abraham think was going to happen when he tried to sacrifice his son? Is it that he just, okay, I guess I got to kill my kid, here we go, which is one way to interpret Abraham's actions? Or did he trust God and God's promise so much that even if it looked like it wasn't going to work, he said, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to keep going this, and eventually God's going to make it right." And to me, that's one of the, that is a decision as a preacher you have to make. You have to decide and then frame everything else you're doing around what do you think Abraham expected? Because the text doesn't tell us, right? I happen to side in the thought that he thinks God was going to make it right because of what he said to Isaac further up the chain, where it's like, "Hey, where's the burnt offering? Don't worry, God will provide it." But you can also just read that as God provided Abraham with Isaac, and so it's just an oblique way to not tell the kid, "What's for dinner? Oh, you're for dinner, right? I'm so glad to have you for dinner." Does that mean I'm having you for dinner, or am I having you over for dinner, right? So as a preacher, to me, you have to make that decision because it colors everything else about Abraham. And it colors the way this story. Again, where I tend to land is Abraham has so much faith that God has made this promise specifically about Isaac, about making him a great nation, that at some point he knows God's going to intervene and make it work, and he's just trusting God to intervene and make it work.
I think that go ahead, Stacy.
Oh, I was just gonna say I think he did it because he thought God was going to show him favor.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. What were you gonna say, Brandy?
I said that I think that Abraham is displaying his faith like it's a steel like faith. I think that's why we got Superman as our hero for this week, because he's the man of steel, and his faith is so strong in the Lord that he had no doubt it was going to come out all right for him, whether his son was killed or not. God was going to make a way for him to come out on top. And it just displays that kind of faith we should have in God, no matter what we go through, whether we come out wounded or come out healed, whatever, we're going to come out on top with God. So that's what I think.
So I fall in this with the fact that I think he believed that God was either going to stop or even bring him back.
Sure.
But because he had already tried it at his own, and at this point kind of had this idea that Isaac was the son of promise that he was given, and so that it was tied to Isaac in some way. And I'm like you, I a lot of that is me looking at in hindsight of us seeing things, and just the way he words, "God will provide," right. And so we see this this stillness that he doesn't know. The fact is, whether we can come up with what we think he believes, but the reality of it is he's still operating on an unknown. He doesn't know what's going to happen, but like Brandy said, he's willing to go through with it. It wasn't like he got there and he started looking around. Okay, God, okay. He was ready to go with the downstroke. Yeah. Now, I think, and I don't want to pull away, but at some point we need to look at Isaac's faith in this as well.
Yeah.
Uh, especially when you start considering, contrary, we really don't know exactly what age he was, but he's not as young as often drawn.
Well, he
And
is old enough to have carried the heaviest load.
yeah,
Right. So he carries the firewood, which, if you're gonna burn a person or a ram, that's a fair amount of firewood. Right.
Yeah.
So this is not like a couple logs for your Christmas Eve fire. This is, a reasonable amount of wood here.
Yeah. So you have anywhere maybe 18. Josephus in his writings put down he thought he was 25. So easily someone that could have argued with Dad about said thing,
or
even potentially physically resisted.
Over 100 years old. If Isaac is 120, if Isaac is 25, that means Abraham is 125.
I just looked it up. I kind of cheated. I Googled it. He was 37.
How do we? I don't doubt you, sister. I wonder, how do we know? Is there a time reference, or is this also we've done a lot of things with later tradition?
Yeah.
But he is certainly, to me, to be the one carrying the heavier of the loads, he is at a bare minimum a teenager.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He is not a child, right? He is referred to as he is still Abraham. I guess this is a weird one for Father. This is a weird one for Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Here's a story about a father almost killing his kid.
So would this have something to do with the sermon that you did this morning on?
Well, they're not unreal. I mean, this is a sermon series, right? So all the scriptures share some themes. And so if the sermon this morning focused on having to pass through darkness to resist evil, right? This one is in some ways related, because it is saying, part of what this scripture says is, even when it looks impossible, there's an element of, even when it looks impossible, God's going to come through, and we need to have the strength to hold on. They both share an idea of have the strength to hold on, in that that is key to this sermon series. Key of what makes you the superhero that God needs is you have that strength and faith to pass through hard things. And this one is not lose faith when it looks impossible, right? Whereas this morning rather was about, understanding that we're going to have to go through sometimes to resist evil. You must go through the darkness, right? You must be Batman. You must put on the cowl. I am Batman. My parents are dead. Joker. This one is more an idea of when you're in that moment where it seems like things can't work out, when it seems like the circumstances are impossible, God is able to move, right? Because it seems impossible that Isaac's life is – God has told you to do this thing, and yet you're put in an impossible position, but it turns out for God it's not an impossible position.
Also, what I'm looking at is I forgot what passage it is, but you said something about God said, if you put me before everyone else –
yeah, so that is definitely in this, right?
Yeah, so he's putting God over Isaiah. Yeah,
over Isaac, right?
Isaac,
he is either doing that, or he is has so much faith that God is going to save Isaac one way or another that he's just going on. So that's what you have to decide. Does Abraham think he's going to end up killing his kid or not? Right, this is a really relevant question, and both, the text supports either way, and there's things you can learn either way. So if you think he thinks he's going to kill his kid, what he's doing is he's putting his love of God over his love of his son. The other way to read that, the way I read it, is a little softer. It is that he knows that God is going to make this work out, and he's just going to do what God said. and trust God to make it out, because Abraham knows the character of God so well and has faith in that character of God.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because in the back of his mind, I just pictured that he's thinking, now I know better than this. God gave me this son. I mean, made no way out of no way for me to have this child, and he wants me to do what with him? Surely he's not gonna make me kill my own child, but he's gonna make a way out of this, surely. But I'm going on through this because I trust in God,
Right.
trust him.
But that's a bit, but Stacy kind of brings to us the alternate read, because the alternate read is, well, in the end, I know I've got to put my relationship with God first, and if this is the thing that God wants me to do, then I'll do it. And so you see where it changes the interpretation. One is, I know so well who God is that I know God will never actually make me do this because of what God's promise is. Therefore, I'll go through with this, continue to go through with this, knowing that at some point God will intervene, right? That's one way to read it. The other way to read it, which still has biblical lessons for us, is, again, what Stacy puts out there, that in the end, we've got to put God first, even over the life of my child, which is literally what Jesus says in the scripture from today, right? Those who, don't put me before son, daughter, mother, father, and take up their cross, and doesn't take up their cross and follow me,
they're not worthy.
They're not worthy.
Right.
Those are worthy who take up their cross and follow me.
I love how we have these two ideals juxtaposed beside each other. Last week or today's reading and what's going to be for this next week. You have the having to stand in the darkness and potentially other people coming at you versus having to stand and have faith when what you're asked to do is beyond your comprehension.
Right.
And I like Stacy's looking at it because, yes, it does play into exactly what we read today. But also when you think back when in New Testament, when they're criticizing them, don't brag about being sons of Abraham. God could raise up sons for Abraham from these very rocks. And which who knows? Maybe that's what Abraham was thinking. God'll provide. Maybe I'll have another son. Who knows? Now I tend to lean the other way, but either way, it doesn't matter. He was going through with it regardless because his faith was God has this, even when I don't see how it's going to work out, which I think is what really plays into our understanding of how we apply this in our own lives, is having faith that God will make a way even when it doesn't make any sense to us.
And there's also an element of not stepping off the journey, right? At no point does Abraham hesitate, right? And we see Abraham argue with God, and we see Abraham make mistakes, and so Abraham is by no means perfect in faith. And it's not like we never see Abraham do something wrong or make a mistake or whine a little bit, right? Abraham's human. It's one of the things I like about him. But here, there is no hesitation. At any point, God says, go do this. Here I am. And he goes. And it's just, and the storytelling is structured kind of like a horror film, right? It's just relentless. It's just this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And it is very kind of matter of fact and has a momentum and a drive. They're like, this is a very, from a literature perspective, is very well written, especially for ancient literature, honestly. This is a well-constructed story.
One thing it speaks. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say one thing it speaks to me of is that how deep the relationship was being developed between Abraham and God, and all, because without relationship, without him understanding who God is, then there's no way he could have gone forward with this without thinking God was cruel and about to take his kid. I at least not that I can fathom, but because he knew God and knew what his heart was, he knew that this wasn't God asking something evil, and that even though this appears on the one hand to be that, something good's going to come of it. And ultimately, it was just a test of faith. He never had a desire. And looking back, we can see symbolism in this and what God chooses to do in sacrificing his own son and all of that. But none of that did Abraham know. He didn't
Right.
have any of that.
No, Abraham just has, this is what I'm being asked to do. And I'm going to do it. And there is an interesting, when you kind of read this in light of Jesus, which honestly, when I constructed this series is maybe not the direction I kind of thought to go with it, but it is certainly part of that, of like, God does the thing that that God doesn't make Abraham do, right?
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't actually make Abraham sacrifice his son. God does sacrifice God's son. And so we at least know God was not asking Abraham to do something that God and God's self wouldn't do, which is at least good leadership, right?
And I've actually heard some say that this is like the same mountain range, not the exact same mountain, but the same mountain range, supposedly, in which we're Golgotha. I don't know. I've never done the geographical study to see, but it's an interesting thought, and it makes it line up pretty. But whether it's true or not, I don't know. But
I have heard that too. I've heard that too. So I don't know how. I'm like you. I haven't done any study about that yet, but I've heard it too.
Interesting. So this we can figure out, right? So it is the land of Moriah. Okay, let's look at this.
Not to be confused with Mariah Carey.
Indeed.
Right.
Fantasy.
Okay.
Sweet fantasy.
So certainly that is the theoretically it is believed that Mount Moriah is the Temple Mount, right?
Okay.
That's, and if you think about, so not the people who wrote Genesis, because the people who wrote Genesis were like, it was a long time ago and take your lunch. It was not it was not like these started out as campfire stories, right? These did not start out as written down tales. This story probably predates writing. But the people who assemble Genesis would certainly want us to know, if it was the Temple Mount, they'd want us to know that. And so Moriah is understood to be the Temple Mount, that where Isaac gets sacrificed or doesn't get sacrificed isn't just Jerusalem, is specifically what we call the Temple Mount. That it is tying together, part of it is tying together that sacrificial tradition. Yes, that seems to be, by the way, not just Christianity and Judaism that thinks that. Yeah, so that's Mount Moriah.
All right. So you have this thing of, now from God's perspective, he already knew what was his plan was, and so he was just setting things up, but none of that stops I'm liking this Man of Steel thing more. I hadn't really bought into it yet, but the more we talk about it, that steel set faith of nothing's going to shake my conviction. That's one of the things that Superman kind of has when his mind is set on something, both to his good and to his demise. One of the things that, Batman chides him about, but that aspect of this is going to be, I'm going to do it God's way this time around, is where Abraham has gotten, regardless of how it falls. I'm going to trust him.
Well, because it's worked out. Abraham has been asked to do some extreme stuff, right? Pick up and move everything in the ancient world was not a small thing, right? To leave. Now, he was some sort of like Bedouin-esque figure, but he was asked to go so much further away. He was supposed to leave his ancestral lands and go off to and basically be the founder of a new people, right? That itself, in and of itself, is an extreme thing to ask. And God makes a covenant with him to kind of set up the whys and the hows and the, why this is worth doing. But here we are, Abraham is asked to do yet another extreme thing, and once again, he does it. And so there is a steeliness to Abraham's faith, and you know, this is why, you know, we don't read any of this stuff, you know, in a bot, you know, we read any of this stuff in a vacuum. Rather, we look at the whole life of Abraham, and we look at what Abraham himself has done, and he's not perfect, but in each major thing that God has asked him to do, there is a steely resolve to his faith in God. Except for that bit with Ishmael, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not perfect, but in the big picture, Abraham has a steely faith.
And even in that big mistake, it's like he was trying to assist God's way to come about, you know, and we can be very guilty of that. You know, God's given us a promise. We want to see it come about, get in a hurry to help it along, and then goof up by trying to do it our own way versus being patient in God's timing. Because, you know, okay, it's easy for us to sit back and go, oh, well, you know, he wasn't patient. The man was 100 when he finally conceived. You know, even for them, we get from the text, that was not the normal. Even though they lived longer, it was not normal for that function to still be adequate from the way they say it at that particular
Sarah busts
time.
out laughing, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Sarah's like, nah.
He hadn't thought about that in years. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just like, so.
Yeah, because there's a text like, I think I read it for Theology on Tap, which was, Sarah, why are you the travelers show up and go, Sarah, why are you laughing hysterically?
I'm not laughing.
Yeah.
You don't understand. This is let me talk to you about female anatomy. And they're like, don't even worry about that. So yeah, this is definitely still miraculous. And yeah, he does. So, you know, one of those things with Abraham is, you know, God's way and God's timing, right? Yeah, his big mistake isn't necessarily not thinking about God's plan, but just thinking, oh, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do for God's plan, and God is just up there shaking God's head going, what is wrong with you? No. And now, yeah, no. Well done.
I think another good takeaway from it, though, is that when you've been given a promise from God that really is, and you do know is from God, even when it looks like God directing you in something that's going to take that promise away, he doesn't cause his promises to become null and void. He fulfills his promises, even if it doesn't come out exactly in the direction we thought it would.
Well, right. And that's one of the reasons I prefer the read where Abraham knew that's how this was going to go, right? Because it shows, to me, a really interesting way of thinking about God's promises, that even when it looks like it's not going to work out, it still does, right? Like I like that. I prefer to think of Abraham as just really invested in who God is, and that God is going to, you know, make this happen through Isaac, not that, I guess God will just give me a replacement kid, which is also a valid read.
And then God was seeing where Abraham stood in obedience to it, because he could have easily said, brother, I'm not doing that. But he didn't question him or anything. If you notice, he didn't, you know, question why. He just got up. He just got up and went. Yeah.
Got up and did it.
Yeah.
This sounds nuts, but I guess here we go.
Here we go.
Well,
nice
go. Because the other piece of it is that I don't like about the other read is not necessarily what it says about God and Abraham, but all the ways that it can be manipulated by people who want you to do bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like, you know, not to make everything about the Nazis, but like, you know what the number one excuse of the Nuremberg trials were? We were just following orders. No, no. And so the idea that Abraham, I prefer, I guess, and this is preference, right? The text can go either way. The preference is I do not like the picture of like, oh, this one person wants me to do something horrific. Okay, I'm just going to do it. No.
Oh.
If the bad people are telling you to do the bad things and you know they're bad people, don't do them.
Don't jump off the bridge. Stop.
run away to Switzerland or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
go
Of course,
somewhere else.
the tendency of people to do that is what made the Milgram
yeah.
shock experiment so frightening. But
Well, right. So I mean, look, our ability to do like again, like, well, I don't know why this became about the Nazis. I guess it's my fault, but one of the things that the field of game theory looked at was, so we want to just say, like, the Nazis were a specific kind of evil. And I think the Nazi leadership were a specific kind of evil. But your average rank and file Nazi, the people who are just following orders, like, the field of game theory looked at and went, no, like, pretty much anyone's capable of doing that in the wrong hands. This is why leadership matters. And I guess why one of the reasons why I prefer my read is I don't want to give ammunition to the people who want you to do horrific things just because they said so. No, Abraham knows he's not going to actually have to do the horrific thing. It's just, he's just having faith in the character of God to not ask him to do something horrific.
Yeah.
And keeping that in mind also helps us when dealing with people in our own walk. There's that phrase, except for the grace of God, there go I. Understanding that, all of us without the grace of God can do horrendous and have done horrendous things and thoughts. And it's that grace that we have that allows us in this journey to move to being better and more Christ-like. And it's by that same grace that we're able to tap into that strength that comes from the measure of faith we have to maintain this steel-like conviction when we need it, in the way Abraham did.
Mm-hmm.
That seems about as good a place to end it for this week. If you have, we almost just start like some sort of poll. Did Abraham really think he was going to have to kill his kid? It would be really interesting. If you have
That'd be a great
comments,
discussion.
Yeah, it would.
And now Trey will tell you about some good Nazi writing that you can go read.
I do not want to accept in this culture this bit of like, oh, maybe the Nazis weren't so bad. No, they were terrible. They're the Nazis. They're the worst. Never forget, in any debate about what's worse, the answer is always the Nazis. They're the worst.
Yes.
They had some good ideas. No, they didn't. They killed millions of people.
Even worse than Charles Manson.
Charles Manson is a rounding error compared to the Nazis. Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
Anyways, if you have thoughts not about defending the Nazis, which I'm not going to read on air, you can leave a comment on our Facebook post or on our YouTube post. You can send us an email, gracechurchpalestine@gmail.com. You can leave a comment over on our website, gracechurchpalestine/video. If you want an audio version of this, where then you can yell at your phone and not at me, you can get an audio only version. Just search Scripture Talk by Grace Church in your podcatcher of choice, and we will be back with you at a regularly scheduled time next week.
Same bat time,
same
bat channel.
I hope so. Go in peace, love, and serve the Lord, and remember, fear not, stay well, God is with us.
And now is a dance. Da 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 da. Yeah. Oh.
La 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 la.
I.
I